There's a lot of talking household items in this movie. So there's this big castle and a prince inside it, but he's got a reputation for being a huge jerk. This old lady shows up and she looks like a homeless person who needs a place to stay since there's a storm outside and she can't really sleep in that. So she asks the prince for help and he's like, nah. And then she's like, hey, actually, I'm an enchantress and I'm pretty, so you're screwed now. And he's like, no, wait, I'm down to help pretty girls. And she's like, nice try, pal. You were not nice the first time, so I'm going to punish you in a way that affects the rest of your life. This whole part is a bit extreme, honestly. The point is, the enchantress turns the prince into a beast and says, okay, here's the rose, I'm putting it in a glass case, and you gotta find somebody and get them to love you. Then you can turn back into a human. But you gotta do it before the last rose petal falls or else you'll be a beast forever. Meanwhile, there's a girl named Belle who presumably lives in France, since in the first song, everybody's saying bonjour. The first song is named after Belle since it's introducing us to her character and showing that she doesn't fit in. See, Belle lives in a small town and she reads a lot of books, plus her dad Maurice is an inventor who makes wacky stuff, so she's got a broader perspective than her neighbors. Belle has a whole bunch of ideas about what life could be like, and maybe she doesn't want to hang out in this poor provincial town forever, especially when the town seems to worship this knucklehead jock idiot named Gaston. This Gaston guy is a real meathead who has never read a book, and you get the sense immediately that he likes Belle because she's not interested in him, rather than because of what she's like or because they have anything in common. Gaston is the type of guy who could go on dates with other girls in the village, and they make that very clear to him, but he only wants to date the girl that doesn't like him. Gaston is a dummy. Also, he's got this sycophant buddy named LeFou who is really short and acts like his lapdog. Maurice is trying to travel to a fair somewhere nearby so he can show off his new invention, but he gets lost and finds himself at the castle. He goes inside and finds a talking clock named Cogsworth and a talking candelabra named Lumiere. Turns out all the furniture and household items can talk because when the enchantress turned the prince into a beast, she turned all of his staff into stuff. This enchantress seems to have really overreacted, since yeah, the prince was a jerk, but I don't think his staff were doing anything wrong. Imagine if you were just doing your job and you get punished severely because your boss acted like a jerk even though you did nothing wrong. Oh wait, that happens to people all the time. I guess this movie is kind of relatable, huh? So the beast shows up and says, Maurice, what are you doing here? And he's being real mean and scary about it. The next day, Gaston shows up at Belle's house trying to court her, and he's being really pushy, so Belle lets the door open while he's trying to give her a smooch, and he falls into a mud puddle. Haha. Belle gets worried when Maurice's horse comes back home without him, so she goes to search for her father and she ends up at the castle. Belle gets to the castle and finds that Maurice is in the dungeon. She's really upset and offers to take his place as prisoner since Maurice is older and being in jail is bad for his health. The beast agrees and sends Maurice packing. Back in town, Gaston is sulking since he can't have everything he wants, just most things. LeFou tries to cheer him up by getting a bunch of dopey guys in a bar and a couple of dopey girls to sing a song about how Gaston is really cool and awesome. I've got a feeling that part of why people give Gaston all this praise is because he's a meathead and could beat them up if he wanted. Once the bogus Gaston song is about to end, Maurice comes back into town and tells everyone about the beast, but they all think he's crazy. And they don't just think he's crazy just because of that. They think Maurice is crazy because he's an inventor who has new ideas and thinks outside the box, while Gaston and LeFou and the dopey guys and girls just want the town to be the exact same way forever with no progress. Ugh. The beast allows Belle to walk around the castle since there's this curse that only gets broken by love, and she's a girl and he likes girls, and it's a really long shot since, he's a beast. But you never know, so she's more likely to be happy and keep an open mind if she's not rotting in a jail cell. So she gets to know the staff, and Lumiere puts on this big song and dance number called Be Our Guest, where he does his best to make the castle seem like a cool place instead of like a fancy jail, even though Belle's not allowed to leave. The one rule the beast had was that Belle should never go into the West Wing, so of course Belle checks out the West Wing and sees the magic rose. Then the beast gets really mad and yells at her, so Belle runs out of the castle and into the woods. She gets attacked by wolves for some reason, but the beast shows up and fights off the wolves and gets Belle back to the castle. Belle tends to the beast's wounds, and since he saved her, they start to connect a little better. Then they start to hang out, and Cogsworth and Lumiere and the teapot lady, Mrs. Potts, and her kid, the teacup Chip, sing a song about how maybe there's something there that wasn't there before. They even have a scene where they both dress fancy and dance together in like a banquet hall. It's pretty weird though. This movie is trying to get us to root for Belle being in love with an animal. I know they mean for it to be about her falling in love with the person underneath or whatever, but come on, this dude is an animal. Does that mean that Belle is a furry? Not for kids. I guess we'll keep going with the review though, just to wrap things up. Back in the village, Gaston meets up with this guy who runs an insane asylum, and Gaston pays him to say Maurice is officially crazy and lock him up. Then Gaston is all like, yeah, I'm gonna blackmail Belle into marrying me in exchange for getting Maurice out of the asylum, because all of Gaston's ideas about how to get himself a wife and be happy are the opposite of what he should actually do. Maybe Gaston should just drop the whole idea and date a girl who actually likes him. Or maybe Gaston shouldn't date anybody because he's a psycho. Maurice tries to go by himself and rescue Belle, but it doesn't work out, and Belle finds this out by looking in a magic mirror. The beast now has feelings for Belle, so he decides to let her go rescue her father, even though it means he's probably screwed as far as the curse goes. Belle takes Maurice back to town and uses the mirror to show everybody that the beast is real. Gaston realizes that Belle has fallen in love with the beast. Instead of thinking about how maybe Belle is a furry, so he was never going to be her type anyway, Gaston locks her and Maurice in a cellar and leads a mob up to the beast's castle to kill him. Ugh, but it's okay. Chip is there, and he uses Maurice's wacky machine to free him and Belle. Gaston leads the angry mob to the beast's castle, and he fights the beast personally. The beast is all sad at first, but he gets happy when Belle shows up. The beast has Gaston dead to rights, but he spares Gaston's life, so in return, of course, Gaston stabs him with a knife. Then Gaston slips and falls off the roof and goes splat. The beast is dying from the stab wound, but Belle says she loves him just in time for the last magic rose petal to fall, so the beast turns back into a human prince, and more importantly, the staff are turned back into humans, and he and Belle get dressed up in their fancy dance clothes again, and they have a party. This movie has some interesting ideas about being open-minded versus being small-minded, but there are limits, you guys. At the end of the day, Belle is a furry, and furries are weird, and so this movie is not for kids.